Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to the Level Up Life Safety Podcast. I'm your host, Chad Sakaris, president and founder of Divine 180. I've spent the majority of my career in the security industry, and believe me, I've seen my fair share of frustration associated with ever-changing technologies, vulnerability, system integration, and most importantly, education. My goal of the podcast is to address these challenges and provide you, along with the security industry, relevant solutions, and hopefully if I do my job right, I'll add a little entertainment value to your day also. Now today on the podcast, I want to explore the impact and the challenges COVID-19 has had on securing property and personnel. As I tune into the news nightly, I'm routinely reminded by the images of the devastation that gets created by the pandemic, along with the destruction that gets left behind in the aftermath of protest and civil unrest. Now, these new challenges come on the heels of what we're already focused on, which is safely reopening our businesses. My guest today has been in the security industry as a consultant for over 25 years. He's been ultimately involved in working with business owners and property managers to discuss the new security challenges that have recently emerged from the shutdowns and the civil disobedience. Mr. Aaron's extensive background in asset protection and implementing security management programs brings in some unique insight, along with innovative ideas that help us to navigate our strange new world. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Sean Aarons to the podcast. So our next guest is Mr. Sean Aarons, the Security Market Group Leader for Affiliated Engineers. Sean, thanks for being here and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No worries. Now, since the last time that we spoke several months ago, it was pre-COVID, everything's changed. I'm excited about the topic, and I'd really like to get your take.
Sure. So where do we want to start?
Well, almost everyone I talk to is either working online from home or they've been introduced to what I hate to say is the new norm. You know, they're working from home after the effects of COVID have really been amplified with the devastation I'm seeing downtown Chicago. Yep. I mean, a lot of the businesses are being affected by the protest and looters. So I'd like to hear what your customers are saying and what exactly affects or what type of solutions are they looking at.
Well, we've certainly failed the apocalyptic setting on easy right now with regards to what's going on. I think one of the biggest challenges that we've had with COVID is certainly around the ability to respond. So if we look at armed assailant, or previously what we called active shooter, which is now called armed assailant, and we've had 10 years to evaluate that. The first DHS videos showed individuals, basically holding fire extinguishers to take out the assailant. And now, certainly when I saw that, I was like, well, I wouldn't have done that. I would use the fire extinguisher spray, right? And so continually we're starting to learn more and more. COVID has happened in such a very, very confined amount of time that all we can do is react, and we're not really considering the outcomes. So I'll give you a couple personal anecdotes or stories that kind of go along with this. I work with one client. They basically are going to put that social distancing platform in place. I think they were expecting a number of people coming back to the office. And, we had literally lines to Disneyland to get into the elevators.
Adding some tape or some circles on the floor to keep everybody 6 feet apart.
No, these were actual like you see at the airport, the retractable ropes, right?
Oh,
and they were,
okay.
Literally was
like
lines.
A serpentine.
Yeah,
sure.
And we're going to go in this way, we're going to go out this way, everybody's going to transfer, and then we're going to put everybody in the elevator. And so, well, how many people are going to put in the elevator? Well, I put 4 or 6. Well, you've got 6 feet distance up to the elevator, and now we're doing. And so they really didn't consider that. And then we start talking about workplace violence. So I said, okay, well, we come in there, we do the temperature test, and the person throws a temperature. What do we do? Well, they can't come in the building. Well, they own 4 floors. Well, they can't come in the building. So you're going to tell the person that owns 4 floors that they can't come into the building. Well, yeah. And they're thinking about it in that mindset, but then you literally see the light bulb go over like, yeah, that's probably not going to work. Okay, well, let me compliment that. What if the person just says, I'm going to continue. I don't care. I'm going to walk into the building. You're not going to stop me. Do we put hands on that person? Well, yeah. Are we putting hands on that person? No, we're not putting. Then the risk manager, like, no. We're not doing any hands on anybody. And so we just haven't had time to think about this. Another great anecdote. I'm in Las Vegas, hanging out with my friend. We come back. We're super hot. Looking at the security officers that are kind of standing around, and they've got temperature screening. One location, temperature screening. All the other entrances into the hotel, no temperature screening. But this one has temperature screening. And it's hot. So we, throw a temperature, and they say, well, you have to sit down there and cool off. Okay. So I kind of look over to the security officer. I'm like, so what happens if I continue to throw a temperature? Well, thou shalt not pass. I totally get that.
So at some point, however, if your temperature was to drop below whatever their threshold is, they were going to let you into that building.
They'll let you into the building. But here is where we have the breakdown in the operational playbook. I asked the individual, I said, well, I understand you're not going to let me pass, but just hypothetically, what would happen? Well, you're not going to get into the building. Well, all my stuff's up in the room. How do I get my stuff? And literally the security officer looked, I think it was his supervisor, looked at me, he's like, yeah, Ted, what do we do with that? This is the challenge. We don't have protocols. The time to react. The other elements, workplace violence, I mean, when we're looking at home environment and intimate partner violence and dealing with workplace reductions, I was in a RIF discussion with a large employer, and they basically said, we're going to do these Zoom meetings and we're going to terminate them. And I said, okay, what are they going to do with their computer? Well, we're going to send a command and shut down their computer. What if they're in the middle of something that they were doing from a personal matter? Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, what should we do about that? How are you going to get the computers back? Yeah, how are we going to get the computers back? I mean, so, sometimes you just kind of not have to step back from it and kind of look at the, situation. And really, it's down to that whole, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
So your role has drastically changed just due to implementing procedure where previously there wasn't a procedure for any of this. So many of your engagements are with people looking for new procedures that they should implement to ensure that they can accommodate their employees and their guests in their buildings.
I think that one of the biggest values that I bring is I bring an unbiased, unfamiliar perspective where I can ask a question where they otherwise would have just kind of de facto, this is our culture, this is it. But by me raising the question, we recognize, hey, maybe there's some things that we need to do in our culture to address this security concern. The RIF process, I mean, I put a LinkedIn article on it because I had so many different engagements with different clients, and there was some good thoughts that came out of that, and just terms about maintaining the integrity of the individual that you're going to terminate. Or maybe we terminate the red flag employees first, not last, because everyone's going to communicate to the red flag employees that are potentially commit sabotage that they're going to be riffed. And so then they're doing something in the background, getting rid of their computer, damaging, taking off, information that might be relevant to the operations of the organization. And so again, we're not really thinking about it. And so when we have an outside perspective that doesn't have that cultural connection and is completely unbiased, he can raise the questions and say, what about this? And hopefully create that insightful moment to say, maybe we need to reevaluate something.
So do most of your clients, are they seeking out a solution to the problems that they're dealing with, or are they kind of hoping that the problem goes away? Are they assuming that over time we're no longer going to deal with it, so there's no point in focusing on it today? Maybe we'll just worry about this 6 months from now.
The amount of money that was spent on staffing and manpower for contact tracing, as well as just identifying risk assessment processes, was massive. The productivity that was lost towards development of security operational programs, as well as other elements within an organization, has also been significantly impacted as a result of putting these reactive measures in place with COVID. So my role has been significantly over the last 2 months, just kind of asking questions about security. How does the mask play into social engineering and potential access to assets? How do we, address if someone throws a temperature and they become angry, emphasizing de-escalation training and what have you. So there's been a number of things that are kind of coming out of this that, other organizations may come to their own realization. I'm just supporting it from an outside perspective, looking at it as a fresh environment where they've become so biased over a period of time.
You brought up the mask, and that's an interesting conversation because obviously we talk about it a lot. With masks, we run into a potential that people are entering our building where previously, if we were wearing a mask, we would be considered the bad guy. Yeah. Is this going to be a potential problem, with identity, obviously letting people in the building that should be there, but more importantly, what if the bad guy is coming in wearing a mask? How do we identify these people later?
So, facial recognition is trying to address that. I've seen some companies that purport that they can identify the individual even with a mask. But you're absolutely right. Thank God, our criminals are dumb and they haven't figured it out. But I think that we're losing that curve. And I think at some point, individuals are going to figure out, hey, I can wear a mask anywhere I want to go. I can go into the bank. I think we were talking right before we started this about my walk into a bank, and I had sunglasses on and a mask and a hat. And literally as I walked in the bank, I'm like, is this a good idea? Because, a year and a half ago, I potentially would have been taken down, right?
You look like the bad guy.
Right.
Exactly.
I had an engagement with a client where we're actively looking at our surreptitious entry exercise. That's a bolt-on to our threat assessment process. And in this is where we actually try to break into buildings. I use social engineering significantly in these exercises. And I told him, I said, it wouldn't be fair. And he said, what do you mean? Because I'll be wearing a mask. And I think that there's so many dynamic things that are changing. A ripple, we've dropped a large stone in a pond, and that ripple is continuing out. And we haven't even seen some of the ramifications of this. I'm predicting that we're going to be wearing masks for maybe another year or two until it becomes, socially acceptable not to. I'm seeing aspects of violence where individuals who don't have a mask are being attacked, and those that wear a mask are being attacked.
I see it every day. Social media, you've got both sides, and it seems like there's definitely a line that's been drawn, but there is no, either you're for it or you're against it. Doesn't seem to be anybody really in the middle any longer.
What's very interesting about this, and I've used this in a social engineering exercise, is that now I can use the prop of a cough to really get distance away from people. So, I'm in the thing and I get a glass of water and I'm like, and I got my mask on. You want to see a room clear? You would think I became radioactive, right? And I challenge anyone. There has been a psychological and cognitive bias towards individuals that have respiratory ailments now, as a result of all of these things that we've been barraged at with regards to COVID. And a good, those listeners that are on, I know you've been in a waiting for your car being worked on in a Walmart or what have you. We are hyper aware of people that are coughing now.
No doubt about that.
And so now I'm using that to emphasize, an ability as basically a prop to gain access. So there's all these different things that are going on, workplace violence, and some stuff we haven't even seen that are going to create impacts to organizations. For instance, I think we're going to see an accounting here in third quarter about how much money was actually put in by every respective organization, and CFOs are going to be making some hard decisions. With those hard decisions, are we going to logistically go out and get 1,000 laptops for everybody working at home? Also, too, with regards to workplace violence, how do we address intimate partner? Because now the workplace is the home, and with intimate partner violence, we've actually pushed all these people together that don't necessarily want to be together. and we're creating a potential incident. I mean, we just saw recently in a Zoom meeting with some kids and a student where the teacher observed the mother being shot by an intimate partner. It was an act of intimate partner violence, and it happened right on a Zoom call.
Well, and you have to assume these people used to use work as their escape. You know, they might not have been happy in a relationship. They were going to work 8, 10, 12 hours a day. That was their break. There is no break any longer. They're at home with these people 24 hours a day. So, you know, tensions are even higher. Frustrations levels are even higher. So it's putting a big burden, I think, on a lot of people's mental health and their relationships that they're currently in.
Yeah. And how does the workplace address that? Because it is a workplace now. So we typically didn't get involved in home life. I mean, we would support it under an intimate partner that we didn't want it to happen in our office. But now with the office essentially being at home, how does that apply? And we haven't really seen that tested yet. And I think we will. Another aspect.
I think you get into the mental health side of that too. I mean, ultimately, when people are showing up to the office every day, you're starting to experience it. You have an intimate relationship with your coworkers.
Yes.
So you're seeing these people every day, and you're starting to realize when they're in a good place or they're in a bad place. When everybody's in a Zoom meeting and you're meeting for an hour at a time, you're really not getting that interaction with that person to understand what they're truly feeling and to observe if there are danger signs or warning signs that we should be looking at for these people. And you've always done that, and people do that as human beings, not so much as it's required by the HR department or by the employer, but we are seeing it every day when you're reporting to the office. People aren't going to the office anymore.
That's absolutely right. And just termination processes. We go through so many Zoom meetings a day that, you know, after the 30th termination, it's just kind of the same thing. And here's the manager doing this. Yeah, well, I'm sorry, we're going to have to let you go. And the manager's sitting
on his cell phone the whole time.
So it just shows that there's no connection. It's not a result that they're not involved. It's just they're just mentally looking for some other opportunity to, detract them. Another ripple in the lake, if you will, is just businesses. Traditionally, we see that home burglaries happen during the day. And the reason that happens is because no one is home. Everyone thinks it happens at night. It really doesn't happen at night a lot. It happens during the day because everyone's at work. Well, now residential burglaries, assumedly, are down, but our businesses are not occupied. And a lot of those businesses during the day, what do they do with the alarm systems from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.?
Oh, yeah, they were on a program to shut contacts. Right.
So you have basically created these environment that anybody figures out, hey, I can just walk in the door because the alarm might be set, but the contacts are masked.
And it's interesting you say that too, because one of the things you and I were talking about prior to jumping on this call was 58% of businesses in downtown Chicago, they're all on first floor, are claiming that there's a potential they're going to be gone next year. They really are struggling and worried that they're not going to be able to make it. Now, in all fairness, a lot of these first floor residents are bars and restaurants. So outside of the looting and the rioting that has been happening, on a daily basis in Chicago, a lot of these businesses, due to the mayor, were shut down and they weren't allowed to have people come in.
Right.
But, with the protests and the demonstrations that are happening in Chicago, specifically Chicago, but all major cities right now, what's the likelihood that these businesses are going to be packing up and moving out if they don't go out of business? Are we going to see a decline in businesses wanting to be on that first floor in major cities due to protests?
So it's interesting. I had a client, we did a risk assessment about 6-7 months ago. It was for a municipal client, and they had a very old historic municipal building, and there were windows at grade, and they just refinished them and what have you. And there's a bar and entertainment district that they just built about a block and a half ago. And I'm out there one night, and it's just party. It looked like a college town for all intents and purposes. And I submitted to them that I think what you need to do is you need to put some shatter resistant film on these windows, with some good lock it into the biting or put a silicone around it or what have you. And the person literally said, is the propeller wound a little bit tight on the tinfoil hat? It's just an opinion. I'm just giving you an opinion. It's really up to you to make that business decision. And that's what I do with all my risk assessments. I'm just giving you an opinion. I'm opining. You ultimately will make the business decision if you're going to accept, absorb, or transfer that risk, right? So literally 2 months ago when this whole started going, they called me up and said, yeah, so the window film, what manufacturers would you recommend for that? So I think that, these facilities are going to have to look at hardening their environments to delay access. The companies that had shatter-resistant film, and there's a number of them out there, those looters that couldn't get in within a good amount of time, delayed, they went on to an easier target where they could hit the glass and the whole thing would bust it out, right? Fortifying your doors, basically making them more secure and less likely to be pried open or what have you. These are all aspects of delay that are going to make the individuals move to the next target. At any time when we're trying to prevent something from occurring, all we have is time. That time is delay, which leads to detection, right? So as long as we can extend that time, we're there. If we have a determined aggressor, either they're going to continue to hit that cycle process or they're going to just continue working on it. They don't care about what the effects are. So when we look at looting, what is it? It's opportunity, right? So with that, all we need to do is increase the time, and they can't get the looting, they can't get the assets, so they're going to move to the next target. In this way, our neighbor's security, if it's weak, is our best defense.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because that's exactly what my thoughts are when I see the defund the police movement that's going on throughout the country at this point. What do we do? And I think it's probably too early to tell, because I don't think anybody really has defunded a police department. Obviously, measures have been taken. But if you were to defund the police, obviously now you're increasing the amount of time that looters and potential thieves have to get into your building, because the response time is going to be diminished. I mean, ultimately, you're going to run into bigger problems if the police don't respond. So what exactly does that mean? And what type of measures should the customer, your clients, be looking at today to say, hey, you know what, we should probably look, if our current response time is 3 minutes, what if it went to 30? What would that look like?
Excellent point. That in itself is not a ripple, it's a wave that we're going to see over many years. I've been running as a result of, so we look at senior officers that are leaving the force. Those senior officers were training cadets on how to do right policing. They came from the community policing background, right? These officers are leaving the force because they're afraid for their lives. And I'm pensioning out, I'm taking the 75% and I'm getting out. Municipalities love it because now they can basically get that cost off their books and they can get it. But the problem is we are losing the training. The training that has led to these types of events, we're losing it. We're exemplifying the issue that they're going to have harder time recruiting good cops. So this is going to happen more in the future. Moreover, when we talk about defunding the police, what are we doing? What are we defunding? We're taking that money away, but the program has not changed. So what will the police do? They will cut services like armed assailant training and armed assailant tours and crime prevention through environmental design officers to do assessments. All these things are going to go away. So what this means for organizations, recognizing that there is a potential risk to that resource that we had, they need to really start now considering, I'm going to have to protect my own building, my own premise for a period of time until law enforcement can get there. Or I'm going to have to take protection under my own wing, recognizing that the potential that law enforcement will not be there to support me. This is further exemplified by law enforcement because typically we had one-car patrols, right? There was one cop going out there. But the extreme anti-law enforcement rhetoric has many departments mandating 2 officers per car. So we've just cut our patrols down now as well, and our visibility of police. It's a huge issue. I keep telling my clients about this, is that, this is why you want to do a risk assessment. This is what you want to think about. Maybe you want to put your money into the shatter resistant. Maybe we want to put some, better locking hardware on now and what have you, because of the potential of what I think is going to happen in the future.
So we're going to want to see probably hardening of the exterior of the building, make it more difficult for people to get in. If they do get in, well, we're going to want to make it difficult for them to navigate through that first floor of the building.
Yes.
So in a risk assessment, obviously, anybody who is listening that's going to be concerned about their building, or they're a tenant within a building, they're going to want to reach out to you to come in, first step, do that risk assessment, understand what is the threat. And like I said, we've been inundated the last couple of months just with people that are concerned about being on the first floor. What does that mean for them? And like I said, we're hearing every once in a while that people are thinking about moving out of the city, or, if they go out of business, that they're not going to be able to survive. So I thought this was a great opportunity for you and I to get together to really talk about how can people really prepare for the unknown. At this point, there's a lot of unknown and uncertainty that I know in 20 years that I've been doing this, I haven't seen anything like it. So 9/11 was, and strangely enough, today is 9/11. That was, probably the closest in my career in the security industry to where we saw a lot of uncertainty and things that needed to change. I think this is another one of those situations that's being created just due to uncertainty. And, now we realize if there was a lack of police or response, that we're going to have to do something different.
The other thing, too, we also have to consider is our November election. Which way that goes, depending on what side you're on, it doesn't matter. Both have a high potential for civil unrest. Either way.
Well, I agree 100%, because you know what? The other side is not going to be happy one way or another.
That's absolutely right.
That this could continue on for several months after an election, even, until we actually get to some sort of a calm. The good news for us here in Chicago, and I know, throughout the country, it's not always the same, but our crime rate typically goes down because it does get so cold and disgusting outside. So hopefully then, we'll see a little bit of that here in Chicago this year, that people won't want to come out and protest just because it's not worth the time to get out of bed and throw a coat on. So if they want to get a hold of you, if people want to get a hold of you, Sean, what's the best way to do that?
They can grab me on LinkedIn, or they can grab me from my website. It's Affiliated Engineers Incorporated, or AEIENG.com. My phone number, 847-461-9359. That's my cell phone. Always here to help.
Perfect. I'll tell you what, when I do the video portion of this, I'll go ahead and I'll post up all your information, and I'll put a link to it so that they can reach out to you directly via LinkedIn. And I appreciate you coming on the show. I think that this was very informative for a lot of people that are drastically looking for solutions. So thanks again for coming on.
Thank you very much.
I'll talk to you soon. I'd like to thank my friend Sean Ahrens for joining us on the podcast today. As we learned from Sean, a criminal's opportunity is only limited by time. So the longer it takes for a nefarious character to enter your building, the increased likelihood he's going to target your neighbors or someone with less fortification. He also reminded us that hardening the exterior of our building is only one component of a total protection package, which begins with the assessment of how to best protect our assets. We need to explore innovative ideas to ensure that we continue to limit the spread of infectious disease in our workplaces. I've uploaded all the show notes, including links to Sean's contact info, to my website at www.leveluplifesafetypodcast. That's LVUP lifesafety.com. Please help us to spread the word and share this podcast. Click that subscribe button and click that thumbs up. Until next time, I'm Chad Sakaris of Divine 180, saying stay safe, everyone.